For 800,000 years, the Krogans rampaged across the galaxy, slaughtering trillions. But now, a mysterious new species called humans may finally turn the tide. Supreme Commander Vega stood before the Galactic Council convened amidst ruins of a once great civilization, obliterated by the Krogans. The acrid stench of plasma-scorched rubble and rotting corpses filled the air. Vega's eyes swept over his fellow council members, all that remained of a dozen proud races, their empires ground to dust by centuries of relentless Krogan aggression. Vega activated a holographic star map, angry red icons flashing over fallen worlds. "We are losing this war," he declared grimly. In their latest offensive, the Krogans annihilated 3 more populated systems, billions dead, entire species driven extinct. He zoomed out, revealing a galaxy awash with crimson Krogan sigils. At this rate, there will be nothing left in 200 years. No free worlds, no council, no hope. Silence filled the chamber, thick with despair. Then a call from an incoming Exorian scout ship crackled over the comms. "Supreme Commander, we found something in an uncharted fringe system, a species called humans. Their technology is like nothing we've seen before. They could be the key to stopping the Krogans." A murmur rippled through the council. Vega raised a hand for quiet. "I move to initiate first contact with these humans, to bring them into the fight at our side. Our survival depends on it." Some protested. "We can't drag another race into this slaughter," but most nodded slowly. What choice did they have? Vega quickly embarked on the swiftest ship to the human homeworld called Earth. He had to convince their leaders to join a war already lost. If he failed, galactic civilization was doomed. Landing in a settlement named Chicago, Vega met with the human commander, General Caleb Reed. The alien presented his desperate plea, promising wealth and glory if Earth helped shatter the Krogan scourge. Reed had his doubts. Humanity was not ready for this cosmic crucible. Their discordant nations still warred among themselves. Bestowing godlike weaponry on them now could spell disaster. But as Vega shared horrific records of Krogan atrocities, Reed knew he had to act. Billions screamed out for salvation. Steeling his resolve, the general agreed, on one condition. Earth's involvement must remain hidden from humanity at large until they could stand united. Vega clasped the human's hand, a solemn pact sealed. Together they would assail the Krogan's flanks with all the ingenuity and savagery of man. Reed's elite soldiers and scientists worked feverishly to merge the Council's strange technologies with their own destructive innovations. The 800,000-year struggle was about to reach its climax, with a young species from the galaxy's edge tipping the balance. An unprecedented alliance, Vega of the stars and Reed of the earth, gambling everything on a final crushing blow. The greatest war the universe had ever known would soon thunder to a close. Deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, General Reed and Supreme Commander Vega pored over schematics and simulations. Human and Mazarian engineers worked side by side, a flurry of activity as they dissected the advanced alien tech. Reed squinted at a glowing hologram. "So your ship's shields draw power from these quantum capacitors?" Vega nodded. "Yes, but they require rare materials found only in a few star systems." A human scientist chimed in. "Sir, I think we can substitute some of our own superconducting alloys. It won't have the same efficiency, but—" Reed clapped the man on the back. "Damn fine work. Get it done." Over weeks of feverish collaboration, a new marvel of hybrid engineering took shape. The Epsilon-class fighter. Sleek human lines melded with the swirling luminescence of Mazarian tech. In simulations, its speed and agility outclassed anything flown by the Council races. Reed handpicked the Reapers, the best pilots Earth had to offer. Men and women who had proven themselves in the unforgiving crucible of air combat. But one name gave him pause. "Marcus, a word." Reed pulled his brother aside. Captain Marcus Reed stood at cocky attention. "You're not benching me. I'm the best you've got." The general sighed. "You're a hotshot, Marcus. Talented, but reckless. This mission, it's not like anything." "I've studied the briefings. Hell, I helped design the Epsilons. You need me up there? Reed saw the steel in his brother's eyes. Okay, but you follow orders, understand? No showboating. In a remote hangar, the Reapers drilled relentlessly. They simulated every scenario, honing their skills and unit cohesion. Marcus pushed his Epsilon to the limit, reveling in its gut-wrenching maneuvers. But as the training intensified, so did Marcus's frustrations. He chafed at the rigid tactics, the alien rules of engagement. Vega's admonishments grated on him. It was all so different from the adrenaline-fueled dogfights he knew. Late one night, an urgent message roused Reed and Vega. They rushed to the command center, where a grim-faced intelligence officer awaited. Sirs, we've intercepted Krogan transmissions. They're amassing an armada, far larger than we anticipated, and they're preparing to move against the Mazarian homeworld. Vega paled. By the eternal void, we thought we had more time. Reed studied the tactical displays, his mind racing. Their forces are still staging at these deep space fueling points? Yes, sir, but once they depart... An idea sparked in Reed's mind. A desperate gamble. He turned to Vega. What if we hit them first? Catch them while they're still loading up ordnance. Take out as many capital ships as we can. Vega considered it. A preemptive strike. Yes, it could work. But we'd be throwing the Reapers into the jaws of the enemy. Reed nodded grimly. I know, but it's our best shot. They worked through the night, hashing out a daring battle plan. The Reapers would slip past the Krogan perimeter defenses, masked by Mazarian stealth tech. They'd strike the primary fueling platform first, where the largest warships were docked. Then, they'd hit the secondary targets, sowing chaos. If all went well, they could cripple the Krogan fleet before it even deployed. But the margin for error was razor thin. They'd be heavily outnumbered, deep in hostile territory. The slightest misstep could spell disaster. Reed knew he was asking his pilots to fly a suicide mission. On the eve of the attack, he gathered the Reapers for one final briefing. They stood at attention, a mix of anticipation and apprehension on their faces. Reed met each of their eyes. I won't mince words. What we're about to attempt, it's never been done. We're flying into the unknown, against odds that would make any sane man turn tail. He paced before them, his voice low and intense. But this is what we've trained for. This is why we're here. Out there, billions of lives hang in the balance. 2 galaxies, teetering on the brink. Reed paused, letting the weight of it sink in. I can't promise we'll all make it back, but I can promise that your courage, your skill, will not be in vain. You are the best damned pilots Earth has ever seen. And today, you'll prove it to the universe. He stood tall, squaring his shoulders. We launch in 30. Reapers, man your ships, and good hunting. The pilots saluted sharply and filed out, their faces set with grim purpose. Marcus caught Reed's eye, giving him a nod of respect and understanding. In the cold vacuum of space, 24 Epsilon fighters streaked towards their target, the hopes of 2 civilizations resting on their wings. The Krogan base loomed before them, a monstrous construct overflowing with guns and swarming with fighters. There would be no second chances. Marcus gripped his control stick, his heart pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. All his life had led to this. He thought of Earth, of the countless worlds he'd never seen, all depending on him, on the Reapers. Over the comm, Reed's voice crackled. All wings report in. One by one, the pilots sounded off. Marcus answered last. Reaper 2-4, locked and loaded. Remember your training, watch your wingman, and give 'em hell. The asteroid base grew in their sights, a looming fortress of jagged rock and glinting metal. Marcus armed his weapons, alien energies thrumming through the hull. He whispered a silent prayer to whoever might be listening. And then, the void erupted in light and fury as the Reapers screamed into battle, the first of Earth to challenge the might of the Krogan horde. The 800,000-year war had reached a turning point, and humanity hurtled towards its date with destiny. The Epsilon fighters screamed through the void, their engines blazing as they closed in on the massive Krogan asteroid base. General Caleb Reed's voice crackled over the comm. "All wings, prepare to engage. Remember your training. We hit hard and fast." Marcus Reed, piloting Reaper 2-4, felt his heart pounding as he locked onto his first target, a Krogan cruiser still docked and loading supplies. He squeezed the trigger, unleashing a barrage of hybrid plasma bolts that tore through the enemy ship's hull. Across the battlefield, Epsilon fighters darted and weaved, their advanced maneuverability allowing them to dance between Krogan defensive fire. EMP warheads detonated in brilliant flashes, disabling entire squadrons of enemy fighters. For a moment, it seemed like the impossible was happening. The Reapers were winning. But the Krogans were nothing if not resilient. As alarms blared across the asteroid base, reinforcements poured from hidden hangars. Soon, the space around the Reapers was thick with enemy fighters. Marcus juked hard to avoid a stream of incoming fire, his cockpit rattling from the near miss. "This is getting hot," he shouted into his comm. A Krogan battlecruiser emerged from behind the asteroid, its massive guns targeting the Epsilon squadron. Before Marcus could react, a blast caught his fighter's wing, sending him into an uncontrolled spin. "I'm hit!" Marcus yelled, fighting with his controls. "Can't maintain altitude!" Caleb watched in horror as his brother's damaged fighter plummeted towards the asteroid surface. "Marcus, eject!" But it was too late. Marcus's Epsilon slammed into the rocky ground, skidding to a stop near a Krogan outpost. Within moments, hulking Krogan soldiers swarmed the crash site, dragging the unconscious pilot from the wreckage. Caleb's mind raced. The mission was in jeopardy, but his brother was in the hands of the enemy. Supreme Commander Vega's voice cut through his thoughts. "General Reed, we must press the attack. We can't risk the entire operation for one pilot." Caleb gritted his teeth. "Negative. I'm not leaving him behind." He opened a secure channel to a contact he'd hoped he'd never have to use. "Zorax, I need your help. It's time to call in that favor." Minutes later, Caleb met the rogue Krogan mercenary at a predetermined rendezvous point. Zorax, a mountain of scarred muscle and ancient grudges, growled, "This better be worth it, human." Caleb laid out his desperate plan to infiltrate the Krogan prison compound. Zorax listened, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "You're insane. I like it." As the remaining Reapers engaged in a ferocious dogfight to draw Krogan forces away, Caleb and Zorax slipped into the base through a maintenance tunnel. They moved silently through dimly lit corridors, Zorax's intimate knowledge of Krogan architecture guiding them past security checkpoints. Finally, they reached the detention level. Caleb spotted Marcus in a cell, bruised but alive. As he worked to disable the force field, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. "We've been made!" Zorax snarled, drawing his massive shotgun. The cell door opened, and Marcus stumbled out. "Took you long enough," he muttered, managing a weak smile. Their momentary relief was shattered by a booming voice that echoed through the prison block. "Intruders! You dare to challenge Krator?" A massive Krogan warlord rounded the corner, flanked by a squad of elite guards. Krator stood nearly 10 feet tall, his armor adorned with trophies from 1,000 battles. "Run!" Caleb shouted, pushing Marcus ahead as he and Zorax opened fire. The narrow corridor erupted into chaos. Zorax roared as he charged forward, his bulk providing cover for the humans. Caleb's precise shots found gaps in Krogan armor, while Zorax's shotgun blasts sent guards flying. But Krator was unstoppable. The warlord shrugged off their attacks, closing the distance with terrifying speed. A swing of his massive arm sent Caleb crashing into a wall, his vision blurring. Zorax engaged Krator in a brutal grapple, the two Krogans locked in a contest of pure strength. "Go!" Zorax bellowed to the humans. "I'll hold him off." Caleb hesitated, unwilling to abandon their unlikely ally. But a familiar sound made him look up, the whine of a fighter's engines. Marcus had somehow gotten his hands on a Krogan strike craft. The ship hovered outside a viewport, its weapons trained on Krator and his men. "Get in!" Marcus yelled through the ship's external speakers. Caleb grabbed Zorax, and they dove through the shattered viewport into the waiting fighter. As they sped away from the asteroid, secondary explosions from their initial attack began to consume the base. The battered Reaper squadron regrouped, limping back towards friendly space. In the cockpit of the stolen Krogan fighter, Caleb looked at his brother and their new Krogan ally. They had survived, but at what cost? As the adrenaline faded, the weight of what they had done began to sink in. They had struck a devastating blow against the Krogan armada, but the war was just the beginning. And now, humanity was irrevocably involved in a conflict that had raged for 800,000 years. Caleb's comm crackled to life. It was Supreme Commander Vega. "General Reed, report your status." Caleb took a deep breath, knowing that the next words out of his mouth would shape the future of Earth and the galaxy itself. Caleb's voice crackled over the comm as the surviving Reapers limped back to base. "All wings, report in." The responses came slower this time, each gap a stark reminder of their losses. Marcus's voice was noticeably absent. Back at headquarters, the mood was grim. Pilots huddled in small groups, voices low and faces drawn. The victory felt hollow in the wake of so much sacrifice. Zorax stomped into the briefing room, his massive frame dwarfing the human officers. "We've got incoming transmissions. It's not good." Supreme Commander Vega's hologram flickered to life, his expression grave. "General Reed, we have a situation. Overlord Gortak has launched a counteroffensive. He's targeting civilian colonies." The room erupted in a cacophony of voices. Caleb raised a hand, silencing them. "How bad?" Vega's hologram expanded, displaying a star map dotted with red indicators. "We've lost contact with New Eden. Horizon is under heavy bombardment. The Krogan are moving faster than we anticipated." Caleb's mind raced. They'd struck a blow against the Krogan war machine, but at what cost? And now, millions of innocent lives hung in the balance. The door slammed open. Marcus stormed in, his flight suit still singed from battle. "This is on us," he spat. "We pushed them too far." "We did what was necessary," Caleb countered, but the words felt hollow even to him. Marcus wasn't finished. "Necessary. We're supposed to be the good guys, Caleb. When did we start measuring victory in civilian casualties?" The brothers stared each other down, years of unspoken tension bubbling to the surface. The room fell silent, all eyes on the Reeds. Zorax cleared his throat. "If I may, humans, the Krogans respect strength. They see your attacks as a challenge. Gortak won't stop until he's ground your worlds to dust." Vega's hologram nodded grimly. "We need a decision, General. Do we press the offensive or divert resources to evacuations?" Caleb felt the weight of command pressing down on him. Every choice meant lives lost, worlds burned. He looked around the room, at the faces of his pilots, some eager for revenge, others haunted by doubt. "We can't abandon those colonies," he said finally. "But we can't let Gortak rebuild his forces either." He turned to Zorax. "You know their defenses. Can we strike at Gortak directly?" The Krogan mercenary's eyes gleamed. "It won't be easy, but I know a way." As Zorax laid out a daring plan to infiltrate Gortak's command ship, Caleb caught Marcus's eye. The anger was still there, but something else too, a glimmer of hope. The Reapers had a chance to end this war, but the cost would be high. As they prepared for their most dangerous mission yet, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that they were hurtling towards a point of no return. The fate of two galaxies hung in the balance, and the next few hours would determine whether humanity emerged as saviors or became the very monsters they sought to defeat. Caleb's fist slammed onto the tactical display, scattering holographic projections of besieged human worlds. "Damn it all!" he roared, his face contorted with anguish. "We're spread too thin!" The command center buzzed with frantic activity as reports flooded in from across the sector. Arcadia Prime, New Avalon, Covenant, names that once represented humanity's hope for the future, now synonymous with desperation and terror. "Sir, we've got incoming transmissions from Arcadia Prime," a young lieutenant called out, her voice trembling. The Krogan fleet has breached the orbital defenses. Caleb's eyes darted to the main view screen, where grainy footage showed Krogan warships descending on the gleaming metropolis. Streaks of plasma fire rained down, shattering skyscrapers and vaporizing entire city blocks. "Reaper Squadron Delta, you are clear for emergency evac," Caleb barked into the comm. "Get as many civilians out as you can." On Arcadia Prime's surface, chaos reigned. Epsilon fighters screamed overhead, providing cover fire as transport ships touched down in crowded plazas. Panicked civilians surged forward, clawing and shoving to secure passage off-world. Pilot Sarah Chen gritted her teeth as she guided her Epsilon through a hail of Krogan anti-aircraft fire. "This is Reaper 3-7. I've got eyes on a group of civilians pinned down in Sector 9. She swooped low, strafing a Krogan patrol with pinpoint accuracy. The hulking aliens fell, giving a handful of humans the chance to sprint towards awaiting transport. But for every small victory, there were a dozen crushing defeats. On New Avalon, Reaper squadrons found themselves outgunned and outnumbered as they attempted to hold off waves of Krogan shock troops. The planet's defense grid flickered and died, leaving millions defenseless. Marcus Reed led the desperate mission to Covenant, the crown jewel of human expansion. His voice crackled over the comm as his fighter weaved through the towering spires of the Ecumenopolis. "This is Reaper Tuna 4, approaching the gubernatorial palace, heavy Krogan presence on the ground." Caleb watched his brothers feed with growing dread. Covenant was already lost. They both knew it. This was a rescue mission, nothing more. Marcus's Epsilon touched down on a landing pad high above the burning city. He sprinted inside, weapon drawn. "Governor Talmadge, we need to move now." The governor's family huddled in a fortified panic room, wide-eyed with terror. Marcus ushered them towards his fighter, acutely aware of the Krogan forces closing in. As they lifted off, a Krogan battlecruiser loomed overhead. Marcus jinked hard, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma fire. The governor's young daughter screamed as the Epsilon shuddered violently. "Hang on!" Marcus shouted, pushing his engines to the limit. They burst through the atmosphere, leaving the doomed city behind. But not every world could be saved. When the Reapers arrived at Madrigal, they found only ashes and death. Caleb stepped off his shuttle, boots crunching on blackened earth. The stench of decay and chemical weapons assaulted his senses. "Search for survivors," he ordered, his voice hollow. They combed through the ruins, finding only corpses. Men, women, children. The Krogans had shown no mercy. In a bombed-out school, Caleb froze. There, amidst a pile of small bodies, lay a familiar face. "Colonel Harris," he whispered, kneeling beside the mutilated form of his old instructor. Something broke inside Caleb in that moment. The idealistic soldier who believed in rules of engagement and moral victories died there on Madrigal. In his place rose a man consumed by vengeance. Back on the command ship, Caleb pored over weapon schematics, his eyes wild with a dangerous light. "We need something that can penetrate Krogan armor," he muttered. "Something they can't defend against." Marcus watched his brother with growing unease. "Caleb, some of these designs, they're war crimes waiting to happen." "They slaughtered children, Marcus," Caleb snapped. "You think they care about war crimes?" The rift between the brothers widened with each passing day. When Caleb ordered the deployment of experimental nanite weapons on a Krogan-held world, Marcus refused. "This isn't who we are," Marcus pleaded. "We can't become monsters to defeat monsters." Caleb's eyes were cold. "Then you're relieved of duty." The tension among the Reapers reached a breaking point when Supreme Commander Vega called an emergency meeting. His hologram flickered to life, expression grave. "There's something you need to know," Vega began. "The Krogans, their ultimate goal isn't just conquest. They're searching for a weapon of unimaginable power." Caleb leaned forward, his interest piqued. "What kind of weapon?" "It's called the Sarcophagus of Eternals," Vega explained. "An artifact left behind by an extinct race. If Gortak gets his hands on it, he could wipe out all life in the galaxy." The room erupted in shouts and accusations. Marcus's voice cut through the din. You knew about this? You've been keeping secrets from us this whole time? Vega's hologram flickered. I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong. Even Zorax, their Krogan ally, looked shaken. If this is true, everything I thought I knew about my people's war. Caleb silenced them all with a raised hand. His eyes burned with newfound purpose. None of that matters now. We have one objective. Stop Gortak and find that weapon first. He turned to Zorax. You mentioned a Krogan scientist named Varaxis. He might know where the sarcophagus is hidden. We need to capture him. Marcus shook his head. This is insane. We're talking about kidnapping and torture now? We're talking about saving trillions of lives, Caleb shot back. The mission to capture Varaxis was a bloodbath. Reaper fighters engaged in a brutal dogfight above a remote Krogan research facility while a strike team infiltrated on the ground. Caleb and Marcus fought side by side one last time, cutting through Krogan defenders with practiced precision. They found Varaxis in a reinforced lab, the reptilian scientist snarling defiance. As they secured their prisoner, a stray shot caught Marcus in the chest. He stumbled, eyes wide with shock. No! Caleb screamed, catching his brother as he fell. Marcus coughed, blood speckling his lips. Caleb, listen to me. You have to stop Gortak, no matter what it takes. But don't lose yourself. Promise me. Caleb clutched his dying brother, tears streaming down his face. I promise. I'll make it right, Marcus. I swear it. With Marcus gone, something fundamental shifted in Caleb. He dragged the captured Varaxis to an interrogation chamber, his eyes hard as steel. You're going to tell me everything you know about the sarcophagus, Caleb said, voice devoid of emotion. And God help you if you lie to me. As Caleb prepared to cross lines he never thought possible, the destiny of the universe hung in the balance. The Reapers, once humanity's brightest hope, now stood at the precipice of becoming something darker. And in the void of space, Overlord Gortak's forces. Caleb Reed stood over the bound Krogan scientist, his face a mask of cold fury. Varaxis writhed against his restraints, yellow eyes glaring defiantly. Last chance, Caleb growled. Where's the sarcophagus? Varaxis spat a glob of green blood. I'll die before I betray my people, human. Caleb's fist clenched. He grabbed a neural stimulator, its tip crackling with energy. Then you'll die screaming. Hours passed. Varaxis's howls echoed through the ship. Caleb pushed harder, driven by desperation and the memory of Marcus's final words. Finally, the Krogan's dedication crumbled. Phoenix Rift, he gasped. Rogue planet. Coordinates. Caleb immediately assembled his strike team. As they prepped for launch, a scarred mercenary strode into the hangar. Archon Vex, the newcomer introduced himself. I hear you're going Krogan hunting. What's your stake in this? Caleb asked warily. Vex's eyes hardened. They killed my friend Thraxel. I aim to return the favor. The Reaper ships plunged into the chaotic swirl of the Phoenix Rift. Stellar debris and energy storms battered their hulls. Suddenly, alarms blared. Krogan signatures, a pilot shouted. They found us! Plasma bolts seared past Caleb's viewport. He barrel rolled, evading fire. All ships punched through to the planet's surface. The battle raged through the turbulent atmosphere. Fighters exploded in brilliant flashes. Caleb's ship shuddered as it pierced the cloud layer, revealing a storm-racked hellscape below. On the ground, Caleb and Zorax led a small team through dense alien jungle. The air reeked of sulfur, and lightning split the sky. They followed Varaxis's intel, fighting through Krogan patrols. At last they reached a crumbling stone structure, half buried in vines. Inside, an object pulsed with otherworldly energy. The sarcophagus, Zorax breathed. Before they could reach it, the wall exploded. Through the dust strode a massive Krogan in gleaming armor. Gortak, Caleb snarled. The Overlord's laugh boomed. Too late, humans! Chaos erupted. Caleb and Zorax dove for cover as Gortak's guards opened fire. They fought desperately, but were outgunned and outmatched. A sickly green mist engulfed Zorax. He collapsed, convulsing. "Bioweapon!" Caleb shouted. He grabbed his fallen comrade and retreated. Outside, Caleb radioed frantically for extraction. Archon Vex's fighter screamed overhead, strafing Krogan positions. The mercenary touched down amid a hail of gunfire. "Get in!" Vex yelled. Caleb dragged Zorax's limp form towards the fighter. Krogan rounds pinged off the hull. He looked back at the ruins, where Gortak's troops were securing the sarcophagus. For a moment, Caleb hesitated. With a curse, he hauled Zorax into the fighter. "We have to go back," Caleb shouted as they took off. Vex shook his head. "My ship's crippled. It's this or nothing." Caleb slumped in defeat as they limped into orbit. He activated his comm, dread settling in his gut. "Commander Vega, we failed. The Krogans have the sarcophagus." Hours later, Gortak's transmission blanketed every channel. The Overlord's voice dripped with malice as he proclaimed his impending victory. Caleb sat vigil in the medbay, watching Zorax's chest rise and fall. The Krogan's skin was mottled with angry welts from the bioweapon. "Come on, you tough bastard," Caleb muttered. "We need you." Days passed. Hope dwindled. Then Zorax's eyes fluttered open. "The blood rituals," he croaked. "They worked." Caleb leaned in eagerly. "Zorax, what can you tell me about the sarcophagus? How do we stop Gortak?" Zorax's laugh was bitter. "You don't understand, human. The sarcophagus requires a sacrifice to activate. The blood of a Krogan overlord." Caleb's eyes widened as the implications sank in. Caleb Reed's eyes narrowed as he processed Zorax's revelation. The sarcophagus required Krogan blood, overlord blood. A plan began to form in his mind, dangerous and desperate. "We need to get to Gortak," Caleb said, his voice low and intense, "before he can fully activate the sarcophagus." Zorax nodded grimly. "His flagship, the Skull Render, that's where he'll be." Caleb turned to his assembled team. "This is a volunteer mission only. We'll be infiltrating the heart of the Krogan fleet." Archon Vex stepped forward, his scarred face set in a hard line. "I'm in. Those bastards took Thraxel from me." Within hours, their plan took shape. Using the intel extracted from Varaxis, Caleb and Zorax would lead a small team to board the Skull Render. Meanwhile, Vex would command the remaining Reaper forces in a diversionary attack. Caleb's stealth shuttle cut silently through space, masked by an experimental cloaking field. The Skull Render loomed before them, a monstrous vessel overflowing with weaponry. They latched onto an auxiliary airlock, burning through the outer hull with plasma torches. Inside, the corridors thrummed with activity. Caleb's team moved swiftly, ducking into shadows and maintenance shafts to avoid patrolling guards. In one narrow passageway, a Krogan soldier rounded the corner unexpectedly. Zorax's massive hand clamped over the guard's mouth, muffling his surprised grunt as Caleb's vibroblade found a weak point in the armor. They dragged the body into a storage closet, hearts pounding. "That was too close," Caleb whispered. As they neared the command sanctum, alarms blared throughout the ship. Vex's attack had begun. Caleb's comm crackled to life. "Multiple Reaper signatures detected," a panicked Krogan voice shouted. "All hands to battle stations." Taking advantage of the chaos, Caleb's team surged forward. They burst into the sanctum, weapons blazing. Krogan bodyguards fell in the initial barrage, but Gortak himself stood before the sarcophagus, protected by a shimmering energy barrier. "Fools!" the Overlord roared. "You're too late!" Caleb dove for cover as Gortak returned fire, his massive weapon spewing superheated plasma. Zorax charged forward, absorbing hits that would have vaporized a human. The two Krogans clashed in a brutal melee, trading earth-shattering blows. Just as Caleb lined up a clean shot on Gortak, movement caught his eye. Supreme Commander Vega hung suspended in a force field, his body battered and broken. Gortak's laugh boomed across the chamber. "Surrender, human, or watch your leader die." Caleb's mind raced. He lowered his weapon slightly, appearing to consider the demand. "Let him go, and I'll tell you how to fully activate the sarcophagus," he called out. As Gortak's attention shifted, Caleb's eyes flicked to Zorax. The slightest nod passed between them. In one fluid motion, Zorax opened fire on Gortak's flank while Caleb took careful aim. Time seemed to slow as Caleb squeezed the trigger. The round found its mark, punching through Gortak's skull. The Overlord's massive form toppled, slamming into the sarcophagus. Blood sprayed across its ancient surface. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, a pulse of sickly green energy erupted from the artifact. The very air seemed to twist and warp around them. "We need to move!" Caleb shouted, rushing to free Vega from his restraints. The wounded commander sagged against him. They stumbled towards the exit as klaxons wailed. The ship bucked and shuddered, metal groaning as if in pain. They fought their way to the escape pods, launching just as the skull render began to disintegrate. From the tiny viewport, Caleb watched in horror as a wave of coruscating energy expanded outward. Krogan ships caught in its path crumbled to dust in an instant. Entire star systems winked out of existence as the wavefront passed. Their pod was scooped up by a waiting Reaper vessel. On the bridge, surrounded by the battered remnants of their forces, Caleb and his team bore witness to the unfolding apocalypse. Vega, his face ashen, spoke in a hoarse whisper. "We've only made things worse. The sarcophagus, it's awakened now. If we don't find a way to shut it down, everything dies." Caleb's fists clenched. He thought of Marcus, of all they'd sacrificed to get this far. "Then we finish this," he said, his voice iron. "Whatever it takes." With Vega's guidance, they began to prepare for one final desperate mission. A heavily shielded courier craft was hastily retrofitted, its systems pushed to the limit. Caleb handpicked his team. Zorax, the hardened Krogan warrior whose loyalty had been proven time and again. Ark Vex, the skilled pilot driven by vengeance for his fallen brother. As they made their final preparations, the remaining Reaper forces gathered. Humans stood shoulder to shoulder with alien allies, united in their purpose to buy Caleb's team the time they needed. Caleb addressed them, his voice carrying across the hangar bay. "I won't lie to you. The odds are against us, but we are humanity's last hope, the galaxy's last hope, and we will not go quietly into the night." A cheer went up from the assembled soldiers. Caleb turned to his small team, Marcus's final words echoing in his mind. "Let's finish this," he said simply. The courier craft shuddered violently as it plunged into the roiling maelstrom surrounding the sarcophagus of Eternals. Caleb gripped his seat, squeezing hard, as exotic energies battered the hull. Alarms blared incessantly. "Shields at 30%! Archon Vex shouted over the cacophony, his hands dancing across the controls. Commander Vega's face was a mask of pain as he fought to remain conscious. "Push through! We're almost there!" Zorax stood impassive, his Krogan physiology allowing him to withstand the increasing G-forces. The others weren't faring as well. Blood trickled from Caleb's nose as the pressure mounted. Suddenly, the turbulence ceased. They'd reached the eye of the storm. Before them, the sarcophagus pulsed with otherworldly power. Vega's voice was barely a whisper. "There are locks, metaphysical barriers. We must undo them." One by one, they performed the rituals Vega described. Caleb felt reality twist around him as arcane energies surged through his body. Archon's face contorted in agony as he completed his part. "The final seal," Zorax rumbled. "It requires Krogan blood magics." As Zorax began the ancient rite, the ship groaned. Panels ripped free, exposing them to the void. Archon's eyes widened in realization. "We need more time," he shouted. Without hesitation, Archon launched himself towards his fighter. Caleb reached for him, but it was too late. The scarred mercenary ship streaked past, ramming into the courier craft. A burst of energy momentarily stabilized their shields. Zorax's chant reached a fever pitch. Energy crackled around him, tearing at his flesh. With a final guttural cry, he completed the ritual. The sarcophagus flared blindingly. When Caleb's vision cleared, he saw only empty space where Zorax had stood. The death wave had frozen in its tracks, suspended in an unnatural stasis. Vega's eyes snapped open. Zorax, he's become the final key. Caleb, you must commune with him. Caleb felt a tugging at the edge of his consciousness. He surrendered to it, and reality melted away. He found himself in a realm of swirling light and shadow, face to face with Zorax's spectral form. Our fates are intertwined now, human, Zorax's voice echoed in Caleb's mind. You must choose. Sever our bond, and the death wave consumes all. Or join with me, overwrite the sarcophagus, and become its eternal guardian. Caleb's thoughts raced. He saw Marcus's face, heard his final words. He thought of the billions whose lives hung in the balance, of the sacrifices made to reach this point. His expression resolute as he made his choice. Caleb's consciousness expanded, intertwining with Zorax's spectral form. The physical world faded away, replaced by a swirling vortex of energy and thought. In this ethereal realm, Caleb felt the raw power of the sarcophagus pulsing around them, a maelstrom of destructive potential. For a moment, Caleb's humanity cried out for vengeance against the Krogans who had caused so much suffering. The temptation to unleash the death wave surged through him, but as quickly as it arose, he pushed it aside. No, Caleb's voice echoed in the void. We end this cycle of destruction. Zorax's presence enveloped him, their essences merging into a unified whole. Together, they focused their combined will on the sarcophagus's core. Caleb felt his very being stretched and pulled as they rewrote the artifact's matrix. Every memory, every fragment of hope and grit became fuel for their task. The pain was excruciating, beyond anything he had experienced in the physical realm. Hold fast, Zorax's thoughts resonated through their shared consciousness. We cannot falter. Around them, the death wave convulsed violently. Tendrils of destructive energy lashed out, threatening to tear them apart. But Caleb and Zorax stood firm, their merged spirits an unbreakable bulwark against the chaos. Slowly, agonizingly, the storm began to recede. The roiling energies collapsed inward, drawn back into the sarcophagus. Caleb felt his physical form dissolve, his essence becoming one with the artifact itself. As the last vestiges of the death wave vanished, a profound stillness settled over the cosmos. The sarcophagus, once an engine of annihilation, now pulsed with a gentle, contained energy. Across the stars, Supreme Commander Vega stared at his viewscreen in disbelief. The cosmic maelstrom that had threatened to consume everything simply vanished. Status report, Vega barked, his voice hoarse. A young officer looked up from her console, eyes wide. Sir, the death wave has dissipated. All readings are returning to normal. Vega sagged in his chair, the weight of countless lives lifting from his shoulders. And Reed? Zorax? The officer shook her head. No sign of them, sir. Or the sarcophagus. In the astral plane, Caleb and Zorax's merged consciousness settled into their new existence. They were no longer separate entities, but a single guardian spirit, forever bound to the neutralized sarcophagus. Their shared thoughts rippled through the cosmos. We stand watch, they intoned, from this day until the end of time. As the news spread, a wave of relief washed over the war-torn galaxy. Supreme Commander Vega stood before a sea of faces, human and alien alike, to make his historic declaration. For 800,000 years, our peoples have been locked in conflict, Vega's voice rang out. Today, that war ends, not through destruction, but through sacrifice and unity. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled crowd. General Caleb Reed and Zorax, once bitter enemies, gave everything to save us all. Their example shows us a new path forward. In the depths of space, the sarcophagus drifted, its terrible power forever contained. Within its crystalline structure, Caleb and Zorax maintained their eternal vigil, guardians against the darkness that had once threatened to consume everything. Eons unfolded as Caleb Reed and Zorax stood sentinel over the sarcophagus of Eternals. Their merged consciousness pulsed through the artifact's core, a living firewall against its apocalyptic potential. Time stretched and warped around them, the passage of millennia barely registering in their eternal vigil. Yet beneath the surface of galactic peace, darker currents swirled. In shadowy corners of far-flung worlds, whispers of the sarcophagus power persisted. Ambitious warlords and power-hungry scientists schemed, each seeking to claim the artifact's might for themselves. Caleb and Zorax rebuffed countless attempts to breach their defenses. Energy weapons splashed harmlessly against quantum shields. Psychic assaults shattered against their unified will. For ages, they held fast. Then came Xyleth. The exiled scientists' approach was unlike any they had faced before. No frontal assault or brute force attempt to seize control. Instead, Xyleth's influence seeped in at the quantum level, a corrosive mist eating away at the very fabric of their defenses. Caleb's essence recoiled as he sensed the intrusion. "Zorax, do you feel that?" "Yes," the Krogan's thoughts rumbled through their shared consciousness. "He's found a way past our outer barriers." They watched in horror as Xyleth's extraction beam penetrated deeper, threatening to unravel their quantum matrix. In that moment of crisis, Caleb and Zorax made their desperate choice. Their unified being shattered, fragments of consciousness hurtling across the multiverse. The pain was beyond description as their very essence tore apart. Yet even as they fragmented, their core purpose held true. Protect the sarcophagus at all costs. Across infinite realities, shards of Caleb and Zorax found themselves locked in eternal struggle. In one universe, a grim-faced Caleb stood alone, having purged all traces of his former companion from their shared matrix. His eyes, once warm with empathy, now held only cold calculation as he maintained his solitary watch. In another reality, Caleb's mind trapped itself in an endless loop of guilt and anguish. The faces of fallen comrades flashed before him in a never-ending slideshow of regret. Zorax could only watch, a helpless spectator to his friend's torment. On yet another plane of existence, their essences fused into a twisted amalgam. This new being, neither fully Caleb nor Zorax, raged against its cosmic prison. It clawed at the walls of reality, heedless of the devastation its escape might unleash. So it continued, fractal iterations of their vigil playing out across the multiverse. Some versions grew monstrous, others faded to mere echoes. Each shard grappled with the impossible weight of their burden, forever changed by the cosmic forces they sought to contain. As reality itself began to buckle under the strain of these infinite variations, the last remnants of Caleb and Zorax converged. At the nexus of all realities, their battered spirits flickered with one final spark of willpower. Together they poured every ounce of their remaining strength into sealing the breach. The multiverse trembled, cosmic strands unraveling around them, yet they held firm, their combined will forming an unbreakable barrier against the void. In that final act, Caleb and Zorax consigned themselves to oblivion. Their essences scattered to the winds of eternity, fading from existence. But their sacrifice ensured the sarcophagus would remain forever cut off from reality, its destructive power contained beyond the reach of any who might seek to wield it. Though their names faded from memory, echoes of their struggle rippled through the cosmos. Where those echoes touched, civilizations flourished, transcending their baser instincts. It was as if the very fabric of reality now hummed with the resonance of their sacrifice, a subtle vibration fostering wisdom and perseverance across all of creation.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.